The more time I spend here, the more I realize the importance of mental health.
You gotta find somebody to help you dance through the darkness.
As the sun goes down on July 4th at Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center, the harrowing day shift is finally over. And I'm speaking with Noah Wiley, Shabana Aziz, Fiona Dourif, and a number of supporting cast members for season 2 of The Pit, as we look at the themes of empathy and mental health that were at the forefront this season.
There's kind of two shows happening simultaneously. We're doing a very accurate medical show that's a depiction of what's happening in healthcare right now. And we're doing a sort of single character study about a man who's on a very specific mental health journey. And, season 1, the thesis was the doctor is the patient. Season 2, the thesis is doctors don't make very good patients. Season 3 in success will be doctors would benefit from being patients. And we begin to see Robbie climb out of the proverbial pit. And in doing so, we get a little bit of methodology and a little bit of perspective on our own journey, hopefully.
We talk about mental health, and we talk about mental health outcomes for physicians and the rates of suicides for physicians compared to other people, and also we've talked a lot about biases also that healthcare workers have. I think for me, I really want, particularly with Javadi, I want her to not be perfect. I want her to not be competence porn. I want a medical student to be able to tune into the pit on their worst day of med school and watch Javadi and feel better about themselves. I really want her to be messy and trying, getting up, failing, and getting up and trying again. And I think I've been really lucky to get that. And so I want to just find new ways for her to try and fail and to be, I think that working in healthcare asks so much of people, like, to be so emotionally aware, to be so emotionally available to your patients, but also 100% compartmentalize between them second by second, to not let any of the deaths you see or the trauma you see affect you mentally, because if you do have poor mental health outcomes, you might not be able to work anymore. We ask so much of our physicians, and I really want to see the toll it takes on them in different ways. And I want to show solutions for how to get out of those situations. I really want the pit to help. I just want to help.
I think the space that Cassie occupies is as somebody who had a lot of twists and turns before medical school. So a lot of times doctors will, be very good in high school and then go into a good college and then a good medical school and then a residency. And Cassie, dealt with addiction and a lot of wrong choices and getting pregnant early. And then the whole thing has happened later. So what that brings is a little bit more intuition in difficult circumstances because she's been there. You saw that a lot with unhoused Sherry in season 1. And then, an ability to connect to patients in a way that feels a little bit more particular in that way. So there's situations that you could thrust Cassie in that will give like a slightly different perspective.
Is there a conscious choice at any point to put maybe more focus on the patients this year?
In some ways, we're still figuring out how to make this show. When we started, we wanted to make it such a practitioner-centric show that photographically, we weren't going to even cover the patients to a large extent. We were really going to focus just on our physicians. And then when we started to cut the shows, we realized that unless you have a sense of who the patient is, you're shortchanging the emotional value of the impact on the practitioner. So we had to recalibrate the way we aesthetically photograph the show to bring that character that's on the bed into 3 dimensions so that the practitioner can have an appropriate reaction. And then it just sort of evolved to, well, these characters are all impacting our characters, or these patients are all impacting our characters. So the more 3-dimensional and specific the situation we place them in, the more we can use that as a catalyst for our own micro arcs for our characters.
And I was told that the character was meant to be a window on who Robbie is from a perspective that can't be seen through the eyes of his coworkers. You know, Duke recognizes where Robbie is, and Duke has been in a similar place. And, you know, he loves Robbie, and he just wants to let him know that there's a way through what he's going through, that though death seems like a good option, it's actually not a good option at all. I see Duke as probably being part of a 12-step group. I can imagine that he probably had some substance abuse issues at a certain point in his life. And the 12-step groups are really founded in the idea of service. And you use your own life to be of service to others. You offer from your own experience. And I think the scenes are written in such a way that that is a perfect paradigm through which to view it. And, you know, Noah's just, I mean, this is his, you know, it's just his thing. That's his strength. And it's the way that I approach things. Meisner is the way that I approach things. And all you can do is, you know, set yourself up to have the experience and then listen to the other person and respond in the moment. And, you know, when you're working with someone like Noah and when you're working on a show like The Pitt, where they prize truth above drama, then, you know, if you've done your work and if you're willing and able to just let yourself be seen, then a scene like that happens. And it was a perfect confluence of material and acting partner and, you know, whatever freedom I was able to find for myself in this job, which, you know, I'm happy to say it was, you know, I didn't have to pretend anything. I know who Duke is, and I was able to be Duke. So whatever came out of my mouth was what came out of Duke's mouth.
The only really information I was given about Digby was that he was bipolar and schizophrenic. And growing up, I also suffered a lot of medical trauma as a child, and psychiatric abuse, where I was involved in a case where a psychiatric hospital ended up getting shut down, and a lot of the hospital staff getting arrested for they were scamming an insurance for insurance.
Wow.
And they had bribed a judge to commit me for the full amount that my insurance would cover me.
Wow.
And I was held in a mental hospital for 3 months against my will, and was severely abused psychologically in that space. And one of the things they had told me when I was 17 years old was that I was borderline schizophrenic and that I would probably not make it to 35 years old without being institutionalized. Here I am, 55 now, and still hanging on. So it took a long time before, even after I found out that it was all an insurance scam and that it was a lie, it took me a long time to realize that, the diagnosis was also a lie too. And so I lived with the possibility of really kind of being Digby for most of my life. Playing Digby was kind of like the closest to just being myself in a character that I've ever really been.
I don't know if you know whether he did this intentionally and I think that unfortunately we're probably never going to know that on the show. But what are your thoughts about the stress that he was under and the mental state that Orlando is in?
Honestly, I feel like I think I'm able to put myself in that situation. I've personally been in a situation where nothing's working out. It feels like you're rock bottom and you're just drowning. There's no other way to put that. You just feel like you're drowning.
Yeah.
You're trying to climb, and even if you make a step, it's just you take 3 steps backwards. You know what I mean? honestly, I feel like Orlando just didn't want to be in that situation. He's the man. He's the father. He's prideful. He needs to provide for his family. He doesn't need handouts. He doesn't need anyone helping him out. Um, and he's gonna do what it takes to get his family forward. And in my mind, Orlando, even if it meant losing his life so they can be better, you know what I mean, is an option. And I don't. I thought about it. I personally don't think it was his intention at that moment. Could it have been that his diabetes and his ketones got so bad that he fainted? You know what I mean?
Oh.
I think those are options. He wasn't doing good at all already. I just feel like those could have been thoughts in his head, and he's thinking about every little thing. And in thinking of something, he could have accidentally slipped, taken a million things. You know what I mean?
This audition came in as a self tape, and I had had a really rough couple of days prior to that. I was the caregiver to someone who was very, very sick. And well, I mean, I was in ambulances, I was in the ER with them, and it's very serious and scary. And I got this audition right after that, and I read the scene, and in the scene that was the audition, it was exactly what had watched in real life happen.
Wow.
For the past couple of the previous days, I had been so, immersed in this, like, keep this person okay and keep everything okay. That reading that scene was this kind of grounding moment of the reminder that you're never alone.
I think mental health and empathy are they're kind of two sides of the same topic, really. Being judged is the beginning of a lot of bad mental health. After I filmed the Pitt episodes, I had to go in for a colonoscopy. As I went through it, and each person was helping me get to the next phase, or, oh, we'll help you get here, we'll help you get there. Don't worry about this, we'll take it. The more accepting the people were in the real hospital, I realized if people like me knew beforehand that they were going to feel safe and not judged, they would go take care of their health better. But the fear that they're going to be judged and they're going to have the Ogilvy Zoo comments and they're going to, get the eye rolling when you step on the scale or every little bit that our imagination makes the worst of. That keeps people from going to get health care.
The beauty of Jada's character is she's kind of in a tug of war between different generations pertaining to the topics of mental health and the shared empathy. I think in Jada's parents' generation and older in Black families, there's been a huge mistrust with the medical field. There has been, the history of people like Henrietta Lacks, who had her stem cells stolen from her without her consent and used to do so much good for modern science, but she never got any credit until many, many years later. There's also the Tuskegee experiments where Black men were experimented on with syphilis. They thought they were being treated for it, and they were actually just being studied. And there's so much usage of Black bodies, and there's countless more stories, but so much usage of Black bodies in the medical field where, we as Black people weren't allowed to be a part of the story willingly. And I think because of that, there's such a stigma around going to the doctor. There's such a stigma around trusting medical professionals and really being able to get things solved or get answers, And so then there's a lot of fear that comes around that.
I imagine people in the healthcare field feeling really frustrated, encountering what are affectionately referred to as like Google doctors. People are often encountering patients that feel like they know best. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there in the world as well. So I guess I can really see both sides of it and feel empathy for both aspects of it, right? Where Santos is extremely frustrated because this is probably their gazillionth person that's come in and done something silly because they followed someone on TikTok or saw some, something on Instagram or something that was not accurate medical advice and put themselves in danger. And also, I imagine McKay's really baffled.
Yeah, there's also a little bit of frustration with the characters that I think are younger and have dealt with fewer of life travails. I think there's also like a gap. Cassie is just a third year resident, right? So she's not she's not Noah, she's not an attending, but she is much, much older than the other residents. There's sometimes a lack of of understanding why they can't see that they need to relate to these patients better than they are.
I just wanted to do my part and do the best I could. And when I saw that scene, it was just endearing because it's reminiscent of Skinny Pete playing the piano. You see this guy and you don't think he's you just assume stuff about him, that he's crazy and has nothing going on in his life, but then you see what he knows in his life and what kind of knowledge he's holding on to, and you wonder where did he get this? Where did this come from? And something I learned from TV, working in TV, is sometimes you don't actually get those answers as an actor, and sometimes you get them later. And so I did the best I could with it, knowing that, trusting that Noah and John Wells and all of the writers on the team knew what they were doing and knew how that was going to come to fruition later. Leticia is so talented, and so brave. She walked in as this new actor just starting off, and she did not miss a beat, and was just fearless, and it's just an amazing thing to watch. And Catherine was so supportive of everybody. I mean, she's her and Noah are like a team when it comes to leading this group, with heart and with integrity. And I have daughters, and I just imagined, uh, as a Meisner kind of trained actor, I imagine what it would be like to have to not be recognized by my own daughter, because of a look, and how that would feel.
Did you dance with your daughter at her wedding?
I did.
And she will always remember you.
I've interviewed Noah twice for Leverage and twice for The Pitt, and he definitely looks more tired than when I interview him for The Pitt. So you've got a front row seat to how this kind of pressure can affect actors, writers, executive producers, directors. From your perspective, how do you practice self-care and balance in the Wiley household with the expectations that come with the show and the responsibilities that come with it?
Noah's been doing this at a really high level for such a long time that we have systems in place. I think, honestly, similar probably to other homes, that it isn't necessarily the entertainment industry. I think that we just are so extremely humbled by the impact that it's had. I think that when John and Scott and Noah started this journey, they really had this very pure intention of they had something else to say. They had something to say, especially now, with the state of our medical system. and the way that people are feeling and the way that healthcare workers are so burnt out from, post COVID, that they had something really, really important to say. And they just went into it with that pure intention. And I think that's why it's had such a beautiful impact on people, because I think you can really see a lot of different people can see themselves in every aspect of the pit. And the way that we deal with it at home is that we always go back to each other. I think even in a mental health way, if you give yourself just a moment, even if you have 5-minute increments of stillness to just get connected to your breath and just sit for a moment in that moment, it can do worlds of good.
The show always looks at these situations from a very non-judgmental lens. Brenda, she's a character who she does get instantly judged by some. Your performance really, really got to me, because the harshest judgment that can be made against her is the one that she makes against herself. And that is just brutal. And it says so much about who we are as people and who we are as a society, and why it's important not to jump to snap judgments. I'm getting emotional here. What are your thoughts on the state of her mental health, and how judgments play into how she ends up where she is?
Thank you so much for that. It's so beautiful. Means the world to me. It's yeah, what I am so grateful that the pit has done, what the writers, the producers have done, is they've not only shined a light on the physical injuries that come into a hospital, but they have shined a light on the invisible ones. And that is so commonly overlooked, because it can be easily overlooked. Brenda comes in with a child who is physically not okay. This child needs attention. There's no negating that. He needs attention. But in all of that, we're missing that the person who is breathing and talking also needs attention. And I think that so often happens in life, right? Where we are carrying something that people can't see.
If there's one thing that you hope people will take away from this character and the story, what do you think it would be?
That there's nothing you could possibly do, and nothing that could be done to you, that takes away your right to be alive. It's really challenging to be a human, and being a human involves making mistakes. And if you take responsibility for your mistakes, and try to be better, then you deserve to be alive, and not alive and punishing yourself, but alive and seeking happiness and fulfillment and value in the world. And that's available to you, whoever you are, and it requires help. It requires someone outside your head.
Everybody deserves love. Everybody deserves compassion. You don't know what battles they've fought, what battles they're fighting, and they may not look like the most desirable person in the world, but that doesn't make them a bad person. There's John Prine was a strong musical influence in my life, and one of my weird little quirky things I do whenever I play any character is I find a song that really kind of resonates with the character. And it's not necessarily about the character, but it's just one that resonates. And then in particular, I chose the John Prine song called "Hello in There," where the very last line is, if you're walking down the street sometime, you see a vacant set of eyes, please don't just pass by and stare like you didn't care. Say hello in there. And that's what I hope people get from it, is that everybody deserves love and compassion.
We all have a responsibility to be accountable. And I think that accountability comes from addressing our personal biases. I think that accountability is in addressing our positions of power, our words, our ability to understand people and have empathy. And if we all really take accountability and look into ourselves first before trying to outwardly blame or pass judgment on others, I think a lot of things will start working better for all of us. Not only just in our communities, but really in the world and how we operate with each other. And I think without that, we're really lost. And I just hope that everybody is able to really see how all the little things that they think, question that, why do I believe this? Why do I feel this way? Is this something that allows for a safe space for others? And if we become inclusive in all of those things, and we become a little bit selfless in all of that, then, we can actually really create a world where a lot of us feel more accepted, a lot of us feel more validated, and a lot of us feel more comfortable really sharing with each other.
What is it Mr. Rogers used to say? Always look for the caregivers, people of the helpers. They're out there, but we trick ourselves into thinking that we are the only people having these problems.
Yes.
And that we should be ashamed of them. And so I think what's great about the show is that it kind of points up the fact that you are not the only one having these problems. I mean, the response, the emails I've been getting from people from around the country, not just, it wasn't just people that I knew from junior high going, oh, I saw you on TV. It was, I'm a doctor from an ER in Philadelphia, and thank you for your story. And, I mean, unbelievable response, because it does highlight you're not the only one having this problem.
I think the impact is still my priority and the writer's priorities. And, we want to make a difference. We want to do good work. We want to be brave. We want to tell brave stories. We don't want to shy away from like the ickiness of it. Like, we're not shying away from any of the complexity of it and the dirtiness of it. It's not going to be sanitized or clean or glamorous ever.
We're all the same. We all have problems. We all have issues. And I think something you could take away from it is that, maybe we need a little bit more kindness in the world. You just don't know who needs it.
It's okay. It's gonna be okay.